anya utpādayaty yadyutpādo navasthitiḥ athānutpāda utpannaḥ sarvam tathā.
Anya utpādayaty enaṃ yady utpādo navasthitiḥ athānutpāda utpannaḥ sarvam utpadyatāṃ tathā. MMK chapter 7 verse 19. If another arising gives rise to it, there is an infinite regression. Or, if it is born already, without arising, let everything be born like that. Or, in a deeper meaning, if going up of a different order causes it to go up, there is non-stasis. If again it has gone up without going up, let everything be uplifted like that. So a key word in today's verse is the first word, anya. So I've commented on it before when it's appeared before in MMK. And having been alerted to its deeper meaning by Ashwagosha, who in particular describes certain women as anya, nominative singular feminine, and a woman who's anya is one who doesn't fit our sort of generic conceptions of a woman, because she's got her own definite peculiarities. You know, she might be very fat, she might have a very strange, outlandish posture, her tits might be hanging out, you know, she might be showing what normally should be kept secret. You know, he quite devilishly, really, Ashwagosha plays with our conceptions of what a Buddhist poem should be about. You know, he kind of invites us to picture women with their genitals showing, really. But below the surface, what he's suggesting is a Buddhist teacher who reveals the real secret of sitting meditation. So anya is one of those words that doesn't necessarily mean what it seems to mean on the surface. On the surface, anya means other or different. See, again, it relates in Shobogenzo, there's the word hibutsu. Hibutsu means non-Buddha, or a Buddha who is different. He means non, or different. So hibutsu means a non-Buddha. And a non-Buddha doesn't mean somebody who's not a Buddha. It means a Buddha who is not what you thought a Buddha would be like. Similarly, in Fukan Zazengi, Master Dogen, in explaining the secret of Zazen, he talks about hishiryo, which means non-thinking. And I was taught by Nishijima Sensei that non-thinking means action, which is different from thinking. But the truth is different from what he thought, ironically enough. Hishiryo, I would like to suggest, without being too dogmatic about it, which is difficult for me on this subject, hishiryo means thinking. It's when Alexander said this work is an exercise in finding out what thinking is, it means it's not doing. The secret of Zazen is not to pull the chin in to keep the spine straight vertically. That is not it. That's what my teacher taught, and my teacher was wrong. 100% black and white. He didn't understand emptiness. He had a non-empty conception of right posture, and that was false. Might have been okay as a starting point, but for him it wasn't a starting point. It was he didn't see it as just conventionally true. He thought it was true. That was a true teaching, to pull the chin to keep the neck bone straight. Ironically enough, there's freedom in that. There's freedom in having been taught that and sticking to it blindly. It's the freedom of the obedience of the Benedictine monk, you know, who doesn't question authority. But it's not the path that I want to go down. That's the path of all the nuns that it's now servicing who have been abused in monastic communities, you know, under the guise of don't be selfish, don't question, just be obedient. The people who taught them that were the ones who abused them. We don't want to go down that path. So, hishiryo means thinking. Think it out for yourself. Think it. Don't just do it. Doing is doing what you know. Thinking is finding the true direction. Thinking, non-thinking, thinking that's not what you thought thinking was, is directing. That's why I say the backward step, Master Dogen's word, the backward step, for me, were kind of salvation. Because although the teaching was very positive, do this, do that, the other, the word eko henshon or taiho, the backward step of turning light and letting it shine, for me, kept pointing me back in the other direction. And thinking and directing in Alexander work are the same thing. So you can't do a direction, but you can think it. And that's what hishiryo means. Hishiryo means directing yourself, thinking in the right direction. It's not intellectual thinking. And on that very point, I was just reading through a newspaper article, which I'm going to read out. My great uncle Eugene makes that point in connection with intuition versus kind of academic type thinking. Intuition is anya, it's alternative. It's not what intellectual people thought. But the real reason I dug out this article from 1974, let's see if I can show you. Here we are. It's called Eugene, my great uncle Eugene, my father's uncle, King of Cross Country. So it's about Eugene Cross, and it's written by a journalist for the South Wales Echo called Terry Campbell. The subtitle. So this is Campbell's Corner. Terry Campbell meets a living legend. It's from the South Wales Echo, Saturday, January the 19th, 1974. And the reason I thought to look at it was a particular paragraph which shows my Uncle Eugene's bloody mindedness, which I very much inherited. And I was reflecting on that as I was doing the gardening this morning. I can't see it exactly now, but the point is that he was famous that if you hit him, he was going to hit you back twice. Once in kind of once hitting you back, and once just to emphasise not to do it again. So again, something else which rang true. I heard somebody say on a Real Vision interview. It was actually Mark Cahodis, who's a famous short seller, that being disrespected is a very strong motivator, and that's true. So part of my motivation for clarifying Nāgārjuna's teaching, which is different, anya, from what Nishijima Sensei taught, is he disrespected me bigly, like when I was 23. Really sort of publicly showed me up. And just like Uncle Eugene, I was always determined get him back. I'm not proud of that. It's just who I am, That's just part of my, well, I shouldn't say it's part of my essential nature, because there isn't an essential nature according to the truth of emptiness, but certainly on the level of conventional truth. If you disrespect me or if you hurt me, I've got a very, very strong desire, a very deep desire to resent you and want to get you back and want to hurt you back. And that's just part of my motivation for doing this work. So that's one of the reasons that I wake up in the morning often and feel I've been a failure, is judged against the criteria of Uncle Eugene, who did so much to help people, and was such a kind of a force for constructive change. I I'd been a failure, really. I mean, I didn't go to Oxbridge as he hoped I would and become maybe something big in the Labour Party or in the trade union movement. That's what my family in Wales would have liked to have seen. So on those levels, I'm conscious that I have not been any kind of success. But then on the other side, there's the teaching of Master Dogen and Asvaghosa and Gautama Buddha, Shoyoku Chisoku, have small ambition, no satisfaction. And Asvaghosa says, that quotes the Buddha saying to Saudhananda, the solitary person should be judged a success. I'll find the verse at some point and read it out. But that makes me think of my mother's grandfather, Bill Howarth, who I knew when he was already a very old man, who was Mr. Nobody. So Eugene Cross, a living legend in South Wales. And on the other side of the family, my great-grandfather, Bill Howarth, Mr. Nobody, a clog-wearing labourer in a Blackburn paint factory, who brought up my mother after her father ran off. He was deaf as a post when I knew him. He used to sit there quietly in the corner just observing. And so that's another aspect. That's the part of me which is happy to be in France and just be living a solitary life, reciting poetry, which is what Bill Howarth used to like to do on his days off from the paint factory. He used to go off into the, what's it called, Tockholes, the sort of natural wilderness behind Blackburn, and he used to wander around there and read poetry. But in the spirit of throwing light on what's the meaning of anya, you see, anya means different, it means contrarian, idiosyncratic, alternative, not conventional, unconventional, and I'm all those things. And a lot of that comes from Uncle Eugene. So I'm going to read out this article. Eugene, King of Cross Country. 2 rugby fans were leaving the Ebervale ground. Typical, one said to the other. Kennedy had to get himself shot to get a New York airport named after him. But Eugene is still around to hear the welfare dropped for Cross. The fan was commenting on the ground's recent change of name to Eugene Cross Ground. Before, Ebervale used to play rugby at the Welfare Ground. So that got changed in 1974 to Eugene Cross Ground. His comment was a tribute to a legendary figure in Monmouthshire and the tremendous hold Eugene Cross, Military Medal, MBE, has exercised on Ebervale, or cross country. This was in 74, and I think it meant 78 or 79. He died in 1981 or 82, Uncle Eugene, and he was made a knight at the end of the 70s sometime. But at that time he was a Military Medal MBE. To thousands of people, he was the town, former chairman of the bench, father of the town's welfare association, and an ex-member of the Welsh Hospital Board, to name a few. He seemed to be in every organisation except the Ministers' Fraternal. Now at 77, still as alert as a man half his age, he sits in his home in Ebervale Hospital grounds with his wife Ada, surrounded by scrolls, plaques, and other mementos of a lifetime of public service. Their one son is a farmer at Abergavenny. On every local council in the valleys, you used to find the natural politicians. They're a dying race now, as the polytechnocrats take over. The old types would have made the White House if they had emigrated to America. They could all at the same time shake hands with one hand, pat their neighbour's back with the other, give a friendly wink to the man alongside, grin at the next bloke, and shake their head in greeting at the character at the back. Their secret was that they genuinely liked people, made everyone feel good, cared for, wanted. and among the supreme examples of such natural political charmers is Eugene Cross. Though he has never stood for publicly elected office in his life. He looks like a Welsh version of Senator Sam Irvine, with the Watergate inquiry's hero's directness of speech and homespun humour. Behind the banter lies a determined man. Anyone who would hit Eugene Cross once would receive 2 blows back, one for daring to hit him and the other as a warning not to try anything so rash again. It is as personnel manager of Richard Thomas and Baldwin's for 21 years that he is best known. Not one strike occurred while he was at the works, and the good labour relations record has continued. I spoke to a man who knows him well. If you went into Eugene on a Monday morning with a problem which could lead to a dispute, you could be sure that he never worried about you going out on strike. He knew as well as you did that you didn't want to go home on wash day and sit in the kitchen all day. He's a shrewd operator, all right, is Eugene. Another steel worker recalled, if a message came to the works that someone belonging to one of the workers had died, he would see that you got a company car to take you home and stay with you as long as you wanted it. And you could be sure that bloke would remember what the firm had done for him the next time there was any talk about a strike. Eugene Cross obviously realised the advantages too, but it would be unfair to say that his gestures to the workers were cynically calculated. He's naturally an outgoing person. He has had plenty of chances to study human nature. One of 8 children, and my father, who made a photocopy of this article, made a note, there were 10 children. William, the oldest, died at 2. Teresa, the last born, died at 6 months. One of 8 children, in fact it was one of 10 children, his father was killed in the steelworks. His mother, who had worked in the coke oven furnaces as a young girl, received 30 shillings a week compensation to her £300 maximum. She had to walk 4 miles to Tredegar to collect it. The background gave Eugene Cross his sympathy with the underdog and a realistic appreciation of how many beans make 5. His wartime experiences helped colour his outlook also. I had to shoot to kill or be killed. It's them or me. Pontypool and Ebervale in the cup match. After World War I, he worked underground, but soon started work in the steelworks and became an official of the Iron and Steel Trades Confederation. Then, in 1929, disaster struck. The steelworks closed. A council of action was formed to try to attract an industrialist to go to Ebervale to reopen the works. At last, in 1935, Ebervale's godfather, Sir William Firth of Richard Thomas and Baldwin's, decided that a new steelworks should be built at Ebervale. The first ingot rolled in 1938. Eugene Cross recalls, Sir William asked for me to be seconded by the union to be the administrator of the new works, because it was rumoured that the labour was pretty impossible in Ebervale, and an investment wasn't recommended because of the rebellious trades union movements. Of course, it was completely untrue, and I proved it to Sir William. He wanted me on his side. The union agreed to second me from the Federation, but I continued my membership and that of the Labour Party. Incidentally, he was best mates with Nye Bevan, his friend in South Wales. I made a sacrifice when I went over to management. I might have been Prime Minister. Who knows? He asks with a grin. I could have been useful in a Labour government. Perhaps. I was still only a young man, less than 32. I was silently ambitious. I felt I wanted to be either a trade union leader or a politician, but I would have preferred to be a politician. What does this former troubleshooter and great persuader regard as essential in dealing with people? The first thing is to take some sort of measure of your man. It can't be described or defined. It's instinctive. But it must have more natural perception than university education provides. Instinctively, you've got to know which way the wind is blowing without looking at the church cockerel. That is wisdom. He's talking about wisdom, prajna. He's talking exactly about Buddhist wisdom, not intellectual understanding, not university knowledge. Wisdom. Instinctively, you've got to know which way the wind is blowing without looking at the church cockerel. So that's what anya means. Wisdom is anya. It's different from thinking. It's different from the kind of knowledge that's conventionally valued. Instinctively, you've got to know which way the wind is blowing without looking at the church cockerel. Does Eugene Cross regret not having left Ebervale? Maybe to go to the States to capitalise on his personality? No. Ebervale is my home. I'm part of its past poverty. I think it's a wonderful place to live. If the dust blowing up from the Bessemer is a little too much for you, then go up to the top of the mountain and get the most beautiful fresh air into your lungs. I wouldn't swap Ebervale for any place in the world. So, anya, another. If another arising, if yady, another anya, arising utpādayaty, gives rise to it, utpādayaty, so that's third person singular causative of utpad, so it means to give rise to or to cause to arise. Utpādayaty, it causes to arise, it gives rise. Enaṃ, accusative singular masculine, to it, to this, to it. If another rising gives rise to it, anya utpādayaty yady, utpādo, yady plus utpādo, yady utpādo, utpādayaty plus enaṃ, utpādayaty enaṃ, anya utpādayaty enaṃ, yady utpādo. If another arising gives rise to it, navasthitiḥ, there is an infinite regression. So that's navasthitiḥ, nominative singular feminine, means there is navasthitiḥ, an infinite regression. So previously we had navastā, which is also translated infinite regression. And we had navastā, I think it was in, without going back, I think it was in verse 3. So this, the word here is also from the verb anavastā, and from the root avastā. So stā means to stay, to remain, to stand firm. Ava, the prefix ava means down. So avastā means go down into, to take one's stand firmly, to remain standing, like rooted, avastā. So the from the verb avastā is the noun avastā, standing firm, and anavastā means not standing firm, so it means instability. And in philosophy, it means an infinite regression, anavastā. So again, we had it in verse 3. If arising causes arising, which causes arising, which causes arising, it's like a hall of mirrors. It goes on and on and on in what the philosophers call an infinite regression. So on the surface, navasthitiḥ is the same as anavastā. It means an infinite regression. But by using the word sthiti, I mean, it gives him an extra syllable, which is always a possibility that he used that instead of anavastā for the meter. But in a couple of verses' time, in verse 22, we're going to consider the sthiti of utpādayaty bhanga. The title of the chapter is utpāda, going up, sthiti, staying still, and bhanga, destruction, dissolution. And so from verse 22, we're going to have a few verses exploring the meaning of sthiti, staying still, or stasis. Ostensibly, it means stasis. In the genesis of a moment of consciousness, the duration or stasis of a moment, and the dissolution of a moment. So below the surface, there's a nod, there's a kind of a little foreshadowing of verse 22. Anavasthitiḥ, there is non-stasis. So the hidden meaning of the line, or a hidden meaning of the line as I read it, is if going up of a different order causes it to go up, there is non-stasis. So in that case, non-stasis means something like inconclusiveness, non-finality, as I translated it in verse 3. So that is consistent with pariksha, exploration, not the establishment of a right posture. That's the false non-empty conception. Compare that with what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, looking deeply, exploring, tathā, looking into what is, looking into reality, looking deeper and deeper into what is. To me, that's a better ethic of practice than establishing right posture, and then when you've established it, or just sit in it. The latter conception, the non-empty conception. I'm thinking of setting up a website called Zen and the Art of Darts, because my wife is interested in Japanese, the sport of fukuya, which is blow darts. And that's one reason. There are a couple of things coming together. But another reason, when I was at university, well, when I was a teenager, I used to like drinking home-brewed beer and playing darts at a night with my friend Kev Grant, who lived over the road. We used to come over. We used to make and drink home-brewed beer, and we used to play darts while drinking the home-brewed beer. And I saw Kev a couple of years ago after his only son George had died of a brain tumour, and was looking for a way to introduce Kev to Buddhist practice. And we did sit together briefly, but he's an old rugby player with very stiff hips, and I just intuited, although we sat together for a while, I could see it wouldn't be easy for Kev now. He's same age as me, 59, nearly 60. It's a bit late in the day to start hoping the hips will loosen up and you'll be able to sit in full lotus. But when I was at university, I read the book Zen and the Art of Archery by Eugene Herrigel. It's one of the books I liked about Zen. And so actually I did start to write my own book at that time, unhindered by the fact that I didn't know the first thing about Zen apart from what I'd read in books. I wrote Zen and the Art of Darts and Zen and the Art of Quality Pinball. That was the other book that I was thinking of writing. And the idea of quality pinball came from reading the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And this idea of quality, which I still like. And when I heard Desert Island Disc with Tony Bennett, I heard him talk about quality in a similar way. And yeah, there's truth in that. So since my wife has got into, she wants to get in, she's attracted to blow darts. And just by coincidence, I had a bit of banter on Facebook with Kev when we were both claiming that back in the day, I was saying that I used to thrash him regularly, on a regular basis. He couldn't beat me at darts. And his memory was the opposite, that he was the champion at darts. So he said, we've got to settle this once and for all. So I said, you're on. And then I started thinking about, yeah, why not? Let's, why can't darts, good old-fashioned British pub darts, why can't that be a way of applying Zen and the Alexander technique? And it can. I mean, but so I've been reading what the Japanese, typical Japan. In Japan, the Blow Darts Association, they've established an association, and because I've seen the emails between my wife and the Japanese Blowpipe Association, it's very formal, and I can see that my wife could easily become the British representative, the UK representative of the Japanese Blowpipe Association, and they want to make it Olympic sport and so on. And that's going to be a huge job, because at the moment it turns out the blowpipe is an offensive weapon, because she just spent a lot of money buying the carbon fibre blowpipe kit, and she's had it sent to a sister's house. And I was saying, well, don't try and import it. You'll end up getting deported, because it's a blowpipe is, by the 1988 Offensive Weapons Act, a blowpipe is an offensive weapon in the UK, so you get into trouble if you try and import it. In France, it's not an offensive weapon. So, yeah, she wants to get into blow darts, but France will be the best place to do it. Yeah, but the reason I thought about that is that because when you read the Japanese Blow Darts Association, there's the good thing and the bad thing about Japanese culture. You see, when I went to Japan, talking about education, I went to the school in England, which was, in some senses, the best school in the country. As the best school was measured in those times by the Sunday Times league tables. The school I went to, King Edward School, Birmingham, was number one in the country, because it sent the most people to Oxbridge, it had the best A-level results, and so on and so forth. So Uncle Eugene, when he knew the only time he ever sent me a Christmas present was when I passed the entrance exam to go to King Edward's. So the family in Wales saw Uncle Eugene had made this sacrifice and hadn't been Prime Minister. Out of his ancestors, out of his descendants, it looked likely that maybe I was going to be the one, that fulfilled the promise. Went to King Edward's, went to Oxford, got a first in PPE, joined the Labour Party, etc., etc. So I didn't get into Oxbridge. So unfortunately, that path was closed. I go off on so many tangents that I lose what thread I'm on, but I remember now. So the reason I started talking about King Edward's was because we were always told at that school how hugely privileged we were. We were the elite representatives, and in some ways the tradition of that school was to send people out into the British Empire, and rule with forward where the knocks are hardest, some to failure, some to fame. Where the iron heart of England throbs beneath its sombre robe, stands a school whose sons have made her great and famous round the globe. Some have worn the scars of battle, some have worn the scholar's crown. Old Edwardians, young Edwardians, forward for the school's renown. That was the old school song. So the point was, you were kind of represented, supposed to represent what was best about Britain. Of course, we all sort of ironically ripped the piss out of it and thought it was all bullshit on some level, but on some level we sort of believed, we were privileged, and obviously we were. there were, you know, there were a whole lot of people at the school that were much cleverer than me, which gave me extra motivation for things like playing rugby and weight training, because that was an area where I could, you know, be better than other people at. But then when I went to Japan, this is what I was getting to. When I went to Japan, I met a person, not only Nishijima sensei, but other Japanese, who thought my culture, my civilization was rubbish. They thought their civilization was the best one. You know, unlike the Germans who after got their asses kicked by America in the Second World War, you know, couldn't be ashamed enough. The Japanese system remained intact. All the big zaibatsu, the big multinationals, in fact, emerged even stronger after the Second World War, because General MacArthur was worried about the Soviet influence on Japan. So he made a conscious decision not to go after all the many layers of war criminals and so on. But so they all kept their positions, including the emperor, all the way from the emperor down. You know, they tried one or two as war criminals, but basically the system remained intact. And part of that was the Japanese arrogance of the 1980s, when you had Japan as number one. You know, they thought they were the number one economy in the world. And Nishijima sensei, my teacher, was very much part of that. He thought Japan was the best civilization in the world. Very practical civilization, you see, unlike the white man, Hakujin no Bunka, the white man civilization, against which he'd fought in the Second World War. You know, that's what the officers were told. You're fighting the colonial, oppressive white man intellectual civilization. So that's part of the disrespect I felt. It was like you don't know anything. You know, you're just just intellectual white man with a brain like a computer. You know, you don't understand real Japanese Buddhist wisdom. See, part of that arrogance, he once gave himself away in a group of university students from America came to his lecture on Saturday, and he was getting quite excited. I remember he kept saying university instead of, he wanted to say, Buddhism is a religion of the universe, he wanted to say, you know, not a spiritual religion, it's a religion of the universe. That's what he wanted to say, but he kept saying, Buddhism is a religion of the university. But you know, in that lecture, he said, I believe Master Dogen is the best Buddhist master in the history of Japan. Therefore, I believe Master Dogen is the best Buddhist master in the history of the world. Oh, wait a minute, what kind of logic is operating there? You know, he's number one in Japan, therefore number one in the world. So, see, deep inside, it was just like Uncle Eugene. Not only personally, but for my civilization. Anyone who would hit Eugene Cross once would receive 2 blows back. One for daring to hit him, and the other as a warning not to try anything so rash again. Poof! Poof! And that's deep down, that's my bloody mindedness too. So if you were going to have a go at my civilization, I'm going to have a go at yours. Not once, but again for good measure. And so out of sheer bloody mindedness, I wanted to find what's wrong with Japanese culture. And once I'd found it, I wanted to go for it. That's part of my success in understanding the faults in Japanese Zen. But it's also part of the failure, because people don't want to, not interested in a Buddhist teacher who seems Mr. Angry. So that's the good side of Uncle Eugene and the bad side. The good side is the determination and the wanting to help people who are on the same side as you. And the bad side is the kind of the bloody mindedness. So what sparked this was, you look at the Japanese fukiya. The good thing is that it's not like, Jockey Wilson drank 10 pints, 10 pints of beer as he was competing in the darts. The heyday of British darts, you had these massive, great people, beer swilling. They drink their pints of beer as they were throwing their darts. So you couldn't think of anything less zen, really. But then on the other side of that, you've got the Zen archery, and now you've got the Zen blowpipe, which is following the same philosophy. So quite opposite from the sort of beer swilling Brits. What those guys would do, they would bow to the target. It's all about being one with the target, and then, these kind of abdominal breathing. To calm yourself with abdominal breathing. Well, from an Alexander point of view, that's just doing that abdominal breathing. So I'm reading about fukiya, and of course, you have got to breathe. Breathing is part of blowing the blowpipe, so that there is a certain amount of forcefulness required from the abdomen in doing that breath. But you can be sure that the Japanese will overdo it. They'll over-systemize it, over-formalize it, over-stiffen it. So you really got to bow into. So the Japanese approach, like Jordan Peterson talks about the yin and the yang in terms of order and chaos, and the middle way is in the interface between order and chaos. But if you look at Japanese Zazen, it's not in the middle way. It's like this. It's very ordered, I'm sure if any Japanese Soto Zen monk is observing my wearing of the kesa, there, or how tidy my samurai is, they'd be horrified, because it's the most important thing. You've got to have everything absolutely in order. So for me, that's the Japanese tendency to be off the middle way. Utpādayaty, springing up, has got more a kind of it's like, let the leaves just fucking blow everywhere. You haven't got to sweep every last one up and have the garden in sort of perfect symmetry. You see what I'm saying? The Japanese, order and chaos, you want to have both. And in the world today, we've probably got too much chaos, and we probably need to have more order. Hence Jordan Peterson's wisdom of tidy your own room. Start with tidying your room. Bring some order where there's too much chaos. But what the Japanese need in things like Japanese Zazen or Japanese, any Japanese way, will tend to have too much order in it. That's how I see it. So abdominal breathing is a case in point. So utpādayaty, springing up, the breathing that's associated with that is free breathing. You can't legislate for freedom. It's like Master Dogen understood it when he talked about, look at a steel yard. A steel yard is in balance when its pivot is free. If you sort of imitate the balance of a steel yard in a thing which is not free, like if it's fixed in place, it might look balanced, but it's not balanced unless it's got the possibility of going out of balance. There's that potential for going off balance, that potential for chaos, and the Japanese don't like that generally. So abdominal breathing is not free breathing. It's breathing it's, in Alexander terms, there's doing involved in it. And in terms of the Sanskrit terminology, it's samskrita. It's done. It's contrived. It's confected. Abdominal breathing is contrived or confected. So So those are the kinds of things that I'd like to explore in the context of darts, whether it's traditional British darts or the fukiya, the blow darts, which my wife started to get interested in. So I'm thinking of setting up a website, Zen and the Art of Darts, to explore those kind of things. This is going to turn out to be one of my longest ever waffles. Anya utpādayaty enaṃ yady utpādo navasthitiḥ. Ostensible meaning: if yady, another anya arising utpādo, gives rise to it utpādayaty enaṃ, there is an infinite regression, navasthitiḥ. Or, in a deeper meaning, if going up of a different order causes it to go up, there is non-stasis. If yady, going up, utpādo, of a different order, anya, anyaha, nominative singular masculine, the visarga is dropped before the ut, so anya utpādayaty enaṃ. If yady, going up, utpādo, of a different order, anya, anyaha, causes it to go up, utpādayaty enaṃ, there is non-stasis, navasthitiḥ. So this actually, happily enough, fortunately enough, just exactly in the hidden meaning, relates to what I've just been talking about. Really going up, there is non-stasis. It's just like the steelyard. When there's really going up, there's balance, but it's not fixed. So that's another meaning of navasthitiḥ, fixity. Yeah? If going up of a different order causes it to stop, there is non-fixity. That might be a better translation. I'll think about that. But non-stasis has the advantage of being a precursor to verse 22 when we consider stasis or staying still. So if going up of a different order means not going up that is studied by poor Alexander technique teachers, like the ones who've got PhDs in neurophysiology, you know, who again, because there are more and more people like that, Alexander would not have been impressed by them. He was not university educated. Just like Uncle Eugene says. The first thing is to take some sort of measure of your man. Alexander would have agreed with that 100%. It can't be described or defined. It can't be described or defined. It's not the kind of thing you can get a PhD thesis on. It's going up of a different order. It's instinctive, but it must have more natural perception than university education provides, you see. I mean, I could start off in a rant now about how the Brahmins of Balliol College with their PhDs in economics have really buggered up Western civilization with their economic models, which they think are more important than actually what's going on in the economy. But that would be a rant for another day. If going up of a different order causes going up to go up, if it causes going up to be going up, there is non-fixity. Stillness without fixity. We'll come back to that when we consider meaning of sthiti from verse 22. So the second line. Athānutpāda utpannaḥ sarvam utpadyatāṃ tathā. Or, if it is born already without arising, let everything be born like that. So on the surface, this is a kind of a ironic comment. If athā. It is born already is utpannaḥ. So past participle of utpād. Utpannaḥ, it is born already, without arising. Athānutpāda. So athānutpāda, the visarga is dropped again before ut. So athānutpāda utpannaḥ. Or if it is born already without arising, so if arising is born already without arising, it sounds like it's saying, well, that's impossible. How can you have arising being born, utpannaḥ, arising having arisen, and utpāda without arising? It sort of sounds absurd on the surface. And so then the fourth para, sarvam utpadyatāṃ tathā. Sarvam, everything, all. Nominative singular neuter, sarvam, all, everything. Utpadyatāṃ is passive imperative. So let it be born. Tathā, like that. Let everything be born like that. So it's a kind of it's like a skeptical instruction, a skeptical imperative. I think on the surface it means something like that. You know, if the impossible is possible, let everything be like that. Like anything could be possible. If a kind of illogical, irrational thing was possible, then let everything be possible. In any case, what it means on the surface doesn't really matter, because what it really means, I think, is if, again, it has gone up without going up, or it's gone up without a genesis, without a non-empty genesis, let everything be uplifted like that. So, in that case, athā, instead of or if, translate if again, because it's not an alternative to the first line, but it's an emphasis saying the same thing. If again, athā, it has gone up, utpannaḥ, which is what we want. We want it going up to truly be having gone up without going up. Or so athānutpāda. So that's like the Taoist thing of doing without doing, activity without activity, going up without going up. So that suggests real going up without even the intention of going up, real going up without targeting going up. So it relates to the discussion of lakshanam earlier in the chapter. So in the first instance, to have a target of going up is what we want, but eventually, ultimately, we want going up without the idea of going up, just in the way that a tree goes up without having any consciousness of wanting to go up, without having any intellectual concept of going up. So in that sense, if again it has gone up without going up, or equally you could say that athānutpāda means without any non-empty conception of a genesis. So if again it has gone up without a genesis, without a non-empty concept, understanding of utpādayaty getting in the way. Sarvam utpadyatāṃ tathā. Let everything, sarvam, everything, let it be uplifted, utpadyatāṃ, like that. Let everything be uplifted like that. So, I think what that's suggesting is what we want, ultimately, is for everything to go up. It's not, so that's, again, a deeper meaning of samutpāda, springing up together. So, just as we want to go up like the Buddha went up under the Bodhi tree, by going back to what suffering is dependent on. Ignorance, confections, divided mind, divided consciousness, and from divided consciousness, psychophysicality, separate body and mind, and so on and so, attachment, becoming, all the suffering of aging and death. Reflecting on that, because I've got bits of tooth falling out at the moment. Get my breakfast stuck in between my teeth where a bit of tooth has come out. Miserable. Lamenting, complaining, bewailing, all the sufferings of aging and death. And it's out of that that the Buddha sprang up while he was sitting under the Bodhi tree. And as that was happening, the Bodhi tree was sending its roots down, gaining nourishment from all the decaying stuff on the forest floor. That big fig tree was connecting into the wood wide web of all those fungi feeding on decaying stuff. So the Buddha was going up, the Buddha sprang up, and the fig tree was going up with him. Both of them rooted in the shitty detritus of life and death. Anya utpādayaty enaṃ yady utpādo navasthitiḥ athānutpāda utpannaḥ sarvam utpadyatāṃ tathā. If going up of a different order, if idiosyncratic, unconventional, alternative going up causes it to go up, there is non-fixity. If again it has gone up without going up, let everything be uplifted like that.
anya utpādayaty enaṃ utpādo navasthitiḥ athānutpāda utpannaḥ sarvam tathā.
Final point to note is that on the recitation you just heard on bodhisvara.com by Professor Kashinath Nyaupanē, he said utpadyaty tathā, but that was amended by in the version by Xiaoyong Ye, it's utpadyatāṃ.